The first rule, and never forget this, write this down right now on a piece of paper. Quote, I'm the dude with the money, end quote. Write that down on a piece of paper. When you start calling people, you look at that, have it in front of you, and constantly be looking at those words. I'm the dude with the money. Right now, yeah, I get it. We're in a seller's market. Vehicles are shortage, whatever. But you know what? That guy is still selling his vehicle. He still wants to make the sale. I'm the dude with the money. You do not want to buy any vehicle that needs anything. So if they said all it needs is a battery, don't do it. Because guess what? You replace the battery, it doesn't start. Guess what else it needs? There could be so many other things that it needs at that point. If you don't have a running vehicle, you don't know how many things it'll take to get it to run. So only consider a running vehicle. Ask for a service history. If they've had that vehicle for, let's say, 50,000 miles, ask for the documentation of everything that's been done to that vehicle in the 50,000 miles. That doesn't necessarily mean you need to stay away from the vehicle if they can't produce that, but that gives you some leverage in the negotiations saying, hey, look, when I sell a vehicle, I list out every oil change, every parts that's been changed, when it was done, what I used. I expect the same. And so that gives you a little bit of leverage on the price to say, okay, well, you want X number of dollars for this vehicle, but you can't provide a full service history, then we have to take some off that. Now, they may have a partial service history, in which case, you're like, let's take a very easy example, oil change. Let's say you expect it to be done every 5,000 miles if they use full synthetic, but they only have documented 15,000 mile changes, and they tell you, well, I do it every 5,000 miles, but I only documented these few changes. Well, I don't know. I need to see it. We need to come off the price a little bit. I would avoid any vehicles that have fluids leaking, because it's hard to determine what the fluids are that are leaking, what the source of the leak is. So for example, you could have like a coolant oil mixture leaking, and that's bad. So if you're really handy and you really know cars well, then you can go ahead and tackle the project, but then he's got to come off the price. So when you call this seller, ask them, hey, look, I turn the car on and I let it idle for 15-20 minutes. Am I going to see anything leaking from the bottom of that car? I like to avoid vehicles that have rust on them, because there's two forms of rust. One is under paint. So if you notice areas where the paint is sort of bubbling up, that means some rust has gotten beyond the paint, and the only way to get rid of it is sand it down to where there's no more rust at all, and then refinish it. And that's kind of a headache. There's also surface rust on the bottom. If there's no surface rust on the bottom of that vehicle, on the underside of the vehicle, then that guy's taken pretty good care of his car, right? If there is some rust down there, then that gives you some leverage in the negotiations. Say, hey, would you mind taking a few pictures of the underside of the car? I'd like to see if there's any rust down there. Now, if there is, and he says that, well, it's just surface rust, then he's got to come off the price. You have a little bit more leverage in the negotiation. If it looks like it's deep rust, and if it is deep rust, and that part's going to need to be replaced, then I would either stay away from the vehicle because he hasn't really taken care of it that well, or again, got to come off the price. So you've decided on a vehicle and you guys have agreed on a price. So you go to the bank, you withdraw the cash, and you're going to send that seller a picture of you with all these stacks of cash next to you, and you're going to tell them, okay, I'm ready to execute on this agreement. Meet me at, and then you give them the address of a shop that you know and trust, because what you wanted them to do is a pre-purchase inspection that you're going to pay for, and you'll prearrange the time with the shop. All you have to do is get the vehicle over there. You're going to bring the cash, and if everything checks out, you're not going to try to lowball them. At the time, if everything checks out, you're going to hand over the full amount, and that's it. So that tells you two things. It gives you an idea of how much confidence they have in their vehicle, right? Because the pre-purchase inspection is pretty thorough. It also gives you an idea of how motivated they are to sell the vehicle, because sometimes you may be looking at a vehicle that's a couple hours a distance away from you. And if they want the money and they're motivated and they're confident in their vehicle, they'll drive that couple hours. They'll meet at that station. They'll wait for 30, 40 minutes, whatever the amount of time it takes for the inspection. They're going to walk out with that cash. Now, that's if everything goes smoothly. If the inspection uncovers something, I would even tell them, I'm not going to sweat the small stuff. But if something, moderate to major surfaces, then, we have to discuss that. So let's say something moderate to major surfaces. And let's say out of a $10,000 vehicle, that repair is going to cost $1,000 or even $2,000. Well, now we know the condition of the health of the vehicle. You could easily say, hey, look, we didn't anticipate this. I'll still give you the full amount less the cost of the repair. And because especially now that he knows that he's got something wrong with the vehicle, he's not going to want to deal with that. He say, okay, look, give me the cash. You guys deal with the repair. And that's a good transaction. And even in that scenario, after the shop performs the repair, you're getting that car back, and now you know what you have.